Chapter 14, Shenzai. When Zhang Xuning returned to the flower hall, she met the Yu sisters who hurried to deal with the matter in the middle of the road. Obviously, they had also heard the news that Zhang Xuning, an outsider, had interfered in the affairs of their house. One had the old grudge in the flower hall before, and the other was the current new hatred. Yu Yu's eyes staring at her seemed to be able to breathe fire. Even Yu Shuang's face was not good, so she only said hello to her lightly. Zhang Xuning also responded perfunctorily. Liangzi with the two sisters of Qing Yuan Bafa must be considered to be married. But she didn't care. Who in the world is afraid of being hated by an ant? After returning to the flower hall, the news of Yu Fangyan's falling into the water spread all over the world. Because he didn't know the specific truth, so the rumors were more outrageous than the facts. It is said that the maid in the house threw herself into the water because she was humiliated by the master's family. Some say that it is a serious girl, and her aunt has just thrown herself into the house, and she can't think of doing something stupid for a while. Of course, the most widely spread is Zhang Xuning's sentence. This girl is the concubine of Yufu, who was bullied by evil servants, but I am afraid that the matter of falling into the water is not so simple. Because Yan Lin came to talk to her before, many young ladies from the family in this flower hall usually follow the rules, but it was the first time they saw this kind of blatant private meeting, and after Zhang Xuning left, they had a lot of criticism about her. And everyone originally had a little thought about Yan Lin. Who would have thought that killing a second girl Zhang halfway would make them feel that Yan Shiza dared to act like this before the crown ceremony? It should be that the marriage was secretly knocked. It's really pathetic. But immediately after that, except for Yu Fangyan's falling into the water, the life of the ladies of the family is boring. How can they resist the temptation to talk about it? It happened that the master's family was taking care of things, and some of them took the opportunity to come to Zhang Xuning's side to inquire. Zhang Xuning said what she saw. Neither add oil and vinegar, nor do you say half a point. After a while, the Yu sisters came back, only saying that a concubine in the house accidentally fell into the water, but fortunately, the mother-in-law found it early and rescued her. And now she has found a doctor to come and see, so it's okay. Of course, everyone was happy that people are fine. But these young ladies of the family have already heard Zhang Xuning's words before, and who doesn't have a little pickled in the house? Some things are clear as soon as they hear them, and they don't bother to believe the nonsense of the Yu sisters at all, but they are the masters, and they still have to give a little face. As for how to pass it on when they return to their own house after the banquet is over, that's their business. Next is the luncheon, chrysanthemum appreciation, poetry, and painting. For Zhang Xuning, it was really boring. If it weren't for Yan Lingxian saying that she would wait for him at the end of the afternoon and go to see the Lantern Festival together in the evening, she was afraid that she would leave after seeing Yu Fangyan. In the last half hour, she only sat on the side, watching these young ladies of the family dance and ink, and tracing one after another pictures of autumn chrysanthemums with different postures on the paved rice paper. After a while, when everyone chooses a leader, the feast will be over. But no one expected that when this elegant banquet was coming to an end, a sudden voice sang at the door, "The eldest princess of Liang has arrived." The eldest princess? Everyone in the hall was taken aback, and they didn't have time to look up at it at all, so they all hurriedly saluted, "Welcome to the eldest princess." Zhang Xuning's eyelids jumped when she heard this, and she began to secretly hate herself for not leaving the table early. But on second thought, I am now a woman. So he forced himself to relax the nerve that suddenly tensed, and saluted with everyone in the corner, subconsciously burying his head low. There was the sound of slight footsteps in front of the hall, and the sound of the rings hanging from the waists of the aristocratic women colliding. Soon, everyone heard a voice coming from overhead. No need to be polite, this princess and Ashu can just hear that the banquet in Uncle Ching Yuan is not over, just take a look at what it looks like, let's be flat. One word at a time, if the pearl and jade are on the plate. It is like fairy music, like a celestial man. When everyone heard this voice, they couldn't help but think about what a fairy princess Liang should be like if she could have such a beautiful voice. Although the young lady of the family is noble, she has never been in and out of the court. Most of them had never seen a princess before, and after they were flat, they all raised their eyes to look at it. However, the moment they saw the appearance of this princess, everyone was stunned, and a little strange appeared in their eyes, and then a kind of pity came to them, and they secretly said in their hearts, "It's a pity." The eldest princess of Liang, Shen Zai, was born from the first emperor's favorite concubine, the Xian Huang concubine, who was favored since she was a child, with brocade clothes and jade food, and her skin was delicate and snow-white, and her facial features inherited the delicacy of the imperial concubine. However, there was a scar at the bottom of the left eye, half an inch closer to the end of the eye. Although the color is a little lighter and not too long, it is particularly eye-catching and dazzling on such a flawless face, which makes it difficult not to notice. The original beauty on a face was completely lost by this scar, which made people sigh, the pearl is cracked, and the beauty is different. It's a broken face. Even if you make fat powder to cover it, you can see it clearly. There is such a beautiful sound, but there is no matching appearance. Zhang Xuning knew that the scar on the face of the eldest princess of Liang was left by the king of Pingnan when he raised his army to rebel against the capital 20 years ago, when she was just a milk doll who had just been born, and was taken by the rebels from the hands of the nurse, as a hostage, and cut a dagger on her face, coercing other royal families hiding in the imperial city to show up. Later, King Qin's army arrived to quell the rebellion. Shen Zai, who is a princess, is of course safe and sound, but she has permanently left such a scar on her face, which has accompanied her from her childhood to the present. Now, although 20 years have passed, in the court and in the palace, all the people who have experienced that turmoil, when they see the scar on her face, they can't help but recall the chaos that made the court soaked in blood. The scar of the eldest princess of Liang is a shame drawn by the rebel party of King Pingnan on the face of the Dacian dynasty. It is precisely because of this that the saint is particularly fond of this sister today. But whenever Shen Zai has any request, as long as it does not involve the survival of the country's society, he will meet it. It was she who wanted to pick the stars in the sky, and Shen Lang also wanted to ask someone to try to see if she could pick them, so she was willing to give up. Shen Zai grew up in the court, and since she was a child, she has seen countless people's eyes when they look at this scar on her face, some pity, some ridicule, and even she occasionally sees their hearts from the faces of some beautiful palace people. What if she is a high-ranking imperial princess? With this scar in a good color, even they are inferior to these lowly palace people. As a young girl, she didn't know what these eyes meant. When I grew older and understood, I turned from anger to hatred, and from hatred to sorrow. Just ask the women of the world, who can really not care about their appearance. Shen Zai swept her eyes, and everyone's eyes on her were all in her eyes. Only one in the corner buried his head and did not raise it, and kept pressing his head low. It's unusual. When she was in the palace, she was accustomed to other people's gazes, and although she felt like a thorn in her heart at the moment, she didn't have a seizure, and only said coldly, "You can continue to paint." Everyone was startled by her sweeping eyes, and quickly withdrew their gaze. Now that the princess had spoken, they did not dare to refute it. So they all returned to their original positions. Those who painted continued to paint, and those who wrote poems continued to write poems. Zhang Xuning also breathed a sigh of relief, and when she went back, she continued to pretend that she didn't exist at all. But before she could sit down again, Shen Zai came directly to her, stood in front of her, and said, "Are you Zhang Xuning?" I really don't know why this ancestor noticed him again. Zhang Xuning is not a queen now, compared to her imperial princess, she is just a young lady from an ordinary minister's family, and the gap in status is there, and she doesn't dare to disobey, so she raised her head according to her words. At this moment, Shen Zai's eyes crossed with undisguised amazement, and after a while, it turned into a little envy with sorrow, and sighed softly, "I came for you today." Zhang Xuning's eyelids began to beat wildly again. Shen Zai said, "No wonder Yan Lin, who no one can surrender, is desperate for you, so good looking, even if I see it, I will be moved, it is really enviable." She was supposed to go to the banquet in the Qinqiu mansion today, but when she arrived, she heard that her brother Shen Ju had gone to the Qingyuan mansion, and Shen Zai was originally clinging to this brother with a gentle temperament and a very good temper, and later she heard that Yan Lin, who had been playing with her since she was a child, was also there, so she asked. Only then did I know that Shen Ji went to Qingyuan Bafa because of Yan Lin, and Yan Lin went because of a certain official lady. She was surprised by this. Seeing that the banquet of the Qinqiu mansion was over, he pulled Xiao Shu, the eldest lady of the Qinqiu mansion who was good with him, to come here to see where the legendary Zhang Er girl was. Shen Zai knew that Yan Lin was virtuous, and she had never been very interested in women. If he can be favored, it must be extraordinary. So just now, she noticed the only figure with her head down, and when she approached her, she asked her to look up, and it was really the second girl Zhang, with a face that was unparalleled, like cold but not cold, like glamorous, unforgettable at first sight. Zhang Xuning screamed in her heart, "What kind of evil fate is this?" Listening to Shen Zai's meaning, it seems that Yan Lin came to see her, even if she didn't want to meet her, she met it. She is clear about the fate of this eldest princess of Liang in the future. After the Yanji Marquis mansion, who was originally in charge of the military power, was implicated and exiled by the old case of King Pingnan, within 2 months, the northern Tatars were ready to move, saying that the new king would succeed to the throne and wanted to ask Daqian to marry the princess as the princess, and the emperor did not want to reactivate the Yanji Marquis mansion, so he sent the eldest princess of Liang to make peace. 4 years later, the Tatars finished their recuperation and completely raised their troops to attack. The Manchu civil and military only welcomed back the princess's coffin. At that time, the emperor had replaced Shen Ju. Under his grief, he overturned Shen Lang's conviction for the Yanji Marquis mansion, rehabilitated the Yanji Marquis mansion, and activated Yan Lin, who had been exiled for 4 years. Yan Lin also finally got the opportunity, led the troops to pacify the border rebellion, expelled the Tatars, killed Yi Di and did not dare to cross the territory of Daqian an inch, sealed the general, held the tiger talisman, and returned to the capital. After that, it was Zhang Xuning's disaster. She remembered that when they first met in their previous life, she was dressed as a man, but she saw that Shen Zai was too concerned about the scar on her face, so she took the thin pen used by others to draw lanterns at the lantern fair, dipped a little cherry powder, and drew the scar for her under her left eye. Shen Zai mistakenly thought she was a man at that time and had feelings for her. Later, I learned that she was a woman, so I naturally couldn't get over it. But before going to Tatar and kiss, she specially invited herself to come and paint her the same makeup as when they first met, and then sat quietly in front of the makeup mirror, looking at the delicate face in the mirror, but 2 lines of tears crossed her cheeks. After Shen Zai went, Zhang Xuning also asked herself many times, if you had another chance, would you still draw that stroke for her when you first met? There was no answer at the time. She didn't think she would. But now, when Shen Zai stood in front of her alive again, and she really had such an opportunity, Jiang Xuning found that her answer was, I will. Her Royal Highness the Princess is the most dazzling pearl of the entire Great Qian dynasty, how can Xuning be in good time? She raised her eyes to look at her and smiled slightly, you don't have to envy your courtiers. It sounded like a compliment with your eyes closed. Shen Zai was disgusted at the first moment she heard it. But when she touched the light of her eyes, she found that her words were very serious and solemn, and she was stunned for a while. Jiang Xuning turned around, pulled her to the unmanned painting table in the corner, gently lifted a tube of sheep's fine pen, lightly dipped a little shallow cherry powder, and said offended, and then stepped forward and traced a few strokes on the scar under Shen Zai's left eye. The original dazzling scar turned into a crescent-like powder for a while. It's like a falling petal. When she retreated, the palace people who followed Shen Zai already let out a low exclamation, their eyes amazed. Jiang Xuning only said, there are some scars, if His Highness cares too much in front of people, then everyone knows that this is the soft place of His Highness, and they can hold a knife and gun to injure His Highness. Your scar is the glory of the dynasty, why be ashamed of it? Shen Zai was completely stunned. No one had ever said such bold words to her, obviously very straightforward and sharp, but it was like a clear breeze like water, brushing through her heart and smoothing out some scars. She stared at the second girl Zhang in front of her, who she met for the first time, and it was difficult to take her eyes off. After Jiang Xuning finished drawing that stroke, she felt comfortable in her heart, and thought about it again. Although she has intersected with the eldest princess of Liang, she still doesn't know how Xie will deal with her in this life. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just that when she looked back, she bumped into Shen Zai's eyes staring at her at the moment, and suddenly her scalp was numb. This look. How can it be the same as the previous life? She subconsciously glanced down at what she was wearing. It was indeed a woman's dress. But why do you look? In the midst of the lightning, an unprecedented thought suddenly popped up in Jiang Xuning's mind, so much so that she trembled all over her body, and couldn't help but arouse a string of goosebumps. Who said that the eldest princess of Liang in the previous life must have been in love with her because she was dressed as a man and mistakenly thought she was a man? In the same situation, there may not be another explanation. That is, seeing her dressed as a man, but she was feminine, so she was close to her, but the eldest princess herself may not know. If that's the case. Jiang Xuning's fingers, which were still holding on to the brush and had time to put it down, suddenly stiffened. At this moment, against Shen Zai's gaze, her whole person was like being struck by lightning, and only 3 words came out of Mu Ran's head. It's over.